I'm happy to be joined by Eric Johnson, the new voice of Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell Blacklist. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So I've gathered this is actually your first engagement with sort of video game voice work and performance capture.
Yeah, it's my first time stepping behind the mic and getting into the glowy ball suit. It's been an education. It's been a lot of fun.
So you come from a traditional acting background.
Yeah.
That's kind of your bread and butter. I mean, was it something that you were greeting with apprehension? Because I would assume it's a fairly different experience.
It is a different experience, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. I mean, as soon as I started seeing actors being used in video games, and it became a part of it. It's something that I've always wanted to do. And even years ago, a friend of mine had been doing a cinematic for Conviction, and he said, I need some temp voices. Can you just do a bunch of stuff for me? So I did like 6 characters for him, just so he could start roughing things in. And it was, I had a blast. It's so much fun to go in and do that. And then to be able to take it to another level, adding the performance capture. And so we're capturing the dialogue and the action all at the same time, you know, with the facial cameras capturing the facial expressions. It's like this whole other level of technology that's incredibly immersive. It sounds like it'd be really cumbersome, but it's actually, you end up using your imagination. It becomes very instinctual. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and also the way that we kind of look at video games, because it is kind of a simulation of reality,
Yeah.
that, you know, attention to movements and things in performance that you might not really pay attention to, be it on stage or on film, does get a lot of highlighted. I mean, I would almost wonder if you can become neurotic about all those small details that they're going to read.
Well, it's actually the opposite. You become less aware with a camera in your face, and if it's right here, you're kind of hyper aware of where it is. But when you're capturing it in the volume, it's being captured in 360. So there's no good side, or you can't be worried about anything because you're capturing everything in 3D. So I mean, they have their reference cameras there, but it's a very different experience in that regard. You can't get too in your own head about it because they're seeing everything at all times.
One of the other benefits I have to imagine is that you don't have to redo a scene for the benefit of the camera angle. You know, it really has to be done just for the benefit of the performance, and that helps you.
It's true. I mean, it's a little bit of a catch-22 because you got to get it right. You want to get it right as one take. So unlike in film, it's like, oh, the front half worked, but the back didn't. We'll just get it. So we don't do a lot of coverage in terms of like just picking up small parts. I mean, it's better to give clean information to the animators and all that. But it's again, I've been equating it to doing small community theater.
Yeah.
With the most technical, advanced, modern day performance capture technology there is. So it's, again, we're using chicken wire and 2x4s to make our sets, but at the same time, it's like you have millions of dollars worth of technology all around you, watching things happen in real time with the character skins on it. It's bizarre.
Now, Sam Fisher, I mean, this is a character that's been around and been kind of front of mind for a lot of people who play video games since 2002. Obviously, Michael Ironside had been doing the voice up until now. Did you feel freedom to play with the character, or do you feel that there was something that was already kind of set in place and you had to kind of respect that tradition?
Well, I think for me, it's a bit of both. I mean, there's inherent things that are going to go with Sam Fisher, regardless of whoever would play him. He's you know, much like James Bond or Batman, you know, there is certain things about Sam Fisher that will always be, no matter who's doing it. And in the conversations with the narrative designers and just talking about the character as a whole and where it's going to go and how they wanted to evolve it, you know, there was an opportunity through the script and those conversations to sort of take it in a bit of a new direction. But obviously, it's the core things that are Sam Fisher, and a lot of those things were things that Michael Ironside created, things that weren't necessarily there. Like, he was very adamant about making this a human being and not just a machine, a killing machine. So so much of what this character is now is because of the work that Michael Ironside did and what he brought to it. So I'd say it's a bit of an evolution, if anything. It's taking that and sort of moving it forward in a bit of a new direction.
Because you come from a more traditional acting background,
yeah.
One thing I've been noting over the past few years, we've seen more performance capture, and with that, more interesting narrative in video games, that you're not having to tell a story that wraps up in 2.5 hours as you would in a film or play. That do you find that there are certain subtleties or certain things that you really can't indulge in traditional acting that the video game format is affording you?
Well, again, going back to, it's very instinctual. I mean, there are certain constraints that you have when a camera is pointed at you in a certain angle that you need to perform to a certain way, especially when you're working in television, you're working so quickly. And we work very quickly with this as well, but there's a certain freedom. And something that I really appreciated from the creative team was an open dialogue. And if I was saying, you know what, this doesn't feel like something Sam Fisher would be doing, because either he's putting himself at risk or it didn't feel elite enough in terms of how he would approach it. We could have a dialogue and find a way to make the scene work, whether it was in the blocking or it was the lines, or if it was even just how we get in and out of the scene. And that was something that I really appreciated. So I don't know, it's different. I mean, when I saw the stack of script for the game, it's like doing an entire season of a TV show.
Exactly.
So it's not a movie, it's not an episode, it's an entire season. So you can imagine the arc of a season of Breaking Bad, and that's what you're trying to accomplish with a game, because you want as many hours of interesting gameplay where you can keep the user or the player interested, and still have a story that's ringing true. One of the you've played more than I have, which I feel at a totally disadvantage.
You're a busy man doing all of your artsy things.
They're just not letting me. They're not letting me get my hands on it yet. But one of the things that really impressed me was how they could keep the narrative strong even through the level. And it was just, maybe it's a little thing from Grimm over the earpiece or just the little cinematic in the middle of it. But it was always clear in terms of the direction of the story of where you were going and giving you context. And I thought that was really well done on their part.
So I have to say, now you've had your first taste of doing performance capture in the video game. Is this something you plan to do, not just for Splinter Cell, but is this something you're interested in pursuing?
I loved it. It was, again, when you talk about that initial trepidation of, you're not necessarily understanding what you're getting into, but the end result is so fascinating. I mean, I can't describe what it's like. It's like having the best possible action figure of your own as a kid. As a kid, you wanted your own action figure that looked like you doing all those things. Well, it's even better than that, because you're not having to move it with your hands. You're watching it. It's like being in your own action movie, and you get to decide every move. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
I just love the whole idea that you may have inspired a generation of young people to no longer go west to seek fame and fortune, but to go to Toronto.
There you go. I'm going to go to Toronto and become a video game star. Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for your time. It was
Thank
a
you so
pleasure.
much.